Okay.
Hello and welcome to this media training. We'll formally start then. My name's Tony and I'm a media trainer. I've been a newspaper reporter, radio reporter and TV reporter over the years, and I now work time helping people get the understand the media and get more out of it. So I was delighted to be asked to help with this. Well, this is what journalists used to look like. And the object of the exercise is to try and get this character to print nice things about you or say nice things about you on the radio or on the television. The way that journalism grew up is news is basically gossip. A lot of people who are representing what you might call worthy causes get very frustrated with journalists because they don't take their worthy cause seriously. And that's because it is basically to sell newspapers, to sell a commercial commodity. And if you're trying to save the world, obviously saving the world is a very laudable aim, because if you don't save the world, we're all dead. But most people day to day find it difficult to get their head around it, which is why you have to do press releases which contain stories, because that's the only way they can understand it. And that is both the audience and that is also journalists, because one of the things that I want you to understand from tonight is that it's not just professional journalists anymore. Everybody is a journalist nowadays, and we've all got mobile phones. The mobile phones are capable of taking pictures. They're also capable of making videos, and also they've usually got audio recorders on them. So we can all be journalists. And one of the things that's very helpful on an action is if everybody films everybody else, get as much footage as possible, because it really adds to the buzz. And you can also interview each other. You can interview each other on video or on audio if you prefer, or take photographs of each other and just ask basic questions about, why are you here today? Why is it important to you? Because it just all adds to the groundswell of support for the action. So journalists don't have to be traditional notion of journalists. So how do journalists get their stories? This rather strange graphic, hope you can see it all right, is you have the 5 W's, www, and this is the traditional way of remembering who, what, why, where, when, how, and this is known as the 5 bums on a bench model. It's how you remember who, what, why, where, when, how, and it's how journalists remember what questions they've got to ask. If a journalist walks into a strange situation, it's supposed to be able to get to grips with the situation simply by asking who, what, why, where, when, how. And the next question is who says. Now this is controversial nowadays, because when I learned about journalism, you weren't supposed to just take people's word for things. You were supposed to check things out. But this, probably because of the fast moving nature of the media nowadays, people don't seem to do as much checking as they used to. So the question, who says? You say that the Bristol's going to be flooded by 2050. Who says this? What's the scientific evidence, etc.? So when you talk to a journalist, always be prepared to back up your assertion with facts. As we've seen from certain famous political edited interviews recently, politicians aren't always challenged in that way. But it's good when you're preparing to speak to a journalist. Part of the preparation is ask yourself about whatever you're going to say. Ask yourself the who, what, why, where, when, how questions, and also say, who says, what is the authority for this thing that I'm asserting? Who am I saying it on behalf of? And who says it's true? Can I prove it? The next question is, who cares? Now, you might find that is a no-brainer, because everybody cares about the planet. Everybody cares about surviving beyond the next 10 or 12 years. But it is actually quite difficult to get people who aren't committed to understand why they should care. So it's worth thinking about that and thinking of some arguments and some reasons why they should care. And just have them at the back of your mind in case they come up during an interview. And the third one of these 3 magic questions is who pays, because that's bound to come up. You're doing this action. It's going to be very expensive. It's going to cost businesses money. It's going to cost individuals money. It's not their fault. So why on earth are you being nasty to these people? Journalists will always try and think of negative things to say to you. This is the word chortle. When I was a newspaper reporter, it used to absolutely frustrate me that certain things got in the paper because they were regarded as stories, and certain things did not get in the paper because they were not regarded as important. And there was no rhyme or reason to this, and it hasn't changed from that day to this. And so I worked out my own formula for defining what a story is, and it's quite a useful thing to know about when you are when you're developing a story from your point of view, because the word chortle is an acronym for the ingredients of news, which is patented by me, but there's no chance. The first ingredient of news is conflict. There's always going to be conflict in any story. I'm going to go through these one at a time, but I'll just give you the list first of all. Human. It has to be human. This is the problem when you're presenting a scientific report to a journalist. Unless there's an obvious human angle, they're probably going to glaze over very shortly. Then we have odd or unusual, a story about the man bites the dog. There's a famous saying by a newspaper editor years ago, said, if a dog bites a man, that's not a story, but if a man bites a dog, that's a story. So look for the angle that is unusual in what you're trying to persuade the journalist to report about. And then, of course, it has to be relevant. That's fairly self-explanatory. Topical, it has to be something that has happened recently or has got a new angle. It has to be local, and it has to be engaging. Now, in talking to journalists, you need to think about each of these things separately. The first one is conflict. Now, conflict covers absolutely everything from wars and death and disaster to personal punch-ups between individuals. One of the things you have to be careful of when you talk to journalists is that they will often try and trick you into criticizing other individuals. So the story becomes about a row between two people, when usually you want it to be about a wider issue. So
the conflict isn't good for us.
Well, I'm coming to that. It is actually.
Okay.
Because everybody likes conflict. When you think about it, it's hardwired into our psyche. Conflict. We like conflict basically because we want to survive. Our survival instincts tell us that when two people are having a fight, that means danger. It means we have to keep out of the way. And also, it's okay to use the conflict principle, because if you use the conflict principle, you will make journalists prick up their ears. So it's okay to say, this is a fight, this is a battle, this is a struggle. Using pugilistic language, military language, is very effective with journalists. You should always try and get it into your press releases. But it's a battle against extinction. It's not a battle against a particular individual. So you're not having a fight with an individual. Apologies for the inconvenience. The journalist will often try and make a story about the inconvenience that has been suffered by an individual person, and so you don't have to go along with that. You can be as apologetic as you like and just keep on saying, we're not fighting against individuals, we're fighting against extinction, which everybody can agree with. Again, it's not against business, it's not against individual businesses. So apologies for disruption. It might be against the government as long as they refuse to do what is needed, but it's not. But it's not a punch-up. That's the point to make. You can use the fact that journalists think that conflict is sexy, and you can use that principle by carrying on about fights and battles and struggles against things without making it personal. And it's a hard trick to manage, but that's the tightrope that you have to walk across. So it's a peaceful, non-violent rebellion. We're not going to beat anybody up. We're not going to harm anybody. We're nice. The next, the H is for human. Everybody talks about human interest stories. But actually, all news is about humans, because if it isn't about humans, it isn't news, it isn't a story. So, saying things like, I love my family, my friends, my neighbors, my community, society, whatever. All the human touchy-feely, lovey-dovey stuff. You really have to emphasize that all the time to make things to make a set of circumstances into a story. We are, of course, all in this together, and we must ensure that there's a future for those we love. These points all come under the human category, and they're not stories in themselves, but they're things that you have to keep putting into your press releases.
Yeah, the touch points, aren't they? Yeah.
Now, odd. You think odd? I don't want to be considered odd. Well, you do really. That will make journalists prick up their ears. Yes, it's weird to be out here doing this stuff, but these are exceptional times, don't you think? Normal isn't working. I quite like that expression. Normal isn't working. It's one that you can slot in all over. And the fact that what you are doing is unusual, it's a key selling point for a journalist. So don't try and minimize your oddness. Odd is great. Of course, it has to be relevant. You might say our action is irrelevant or pointless. Some people might say it was irrelevant or pointless on a local level. They are going about their daily life, and they can't see the point of, for example, lying down and pretending to be dead because they're not seeing the bigger picture. You have to keep emphasizing that you're part of a worldwide movement. You're doing what you can to make governments listen. We can win, and you can help us. Those are all things that point up the relevance point. It's topical, obviously, because climate emergency is now. We have to act before it's too late. And it's local. Now this is one that's a hard balance to get, because of course, as well as being local, it is national and international. So it's worth working out little memes and sound bites that will work locally. This is about Bristol and all the other places, of course, but it is about Bristol. Bristol will be underwater by 2050, according to one report. Bristol will have more storms. Bristol will have more high winds. Bristol will have more drought. These dramatic little memes and sayings are much better than trying to come out with a thoroughly researched scientific sentence which will go over most people's head. Bristol will die. It's great. We hope it won't, but it's a dramatic thing to say. Now the final one, engaging, is about how you hook the other people in. It's sort of an extension of the human thing. So figure out your personal connection story. Why did you personally get involved in this? For example, I mean, I've written this rather corny thing about, I was just pushing my 4-year-old on a swing and I thought, will she have a future? Now, that's not very good. I'm sure you can come up with better yourself, but people are bound to ask this on an event. Strangers might ask you, journalists might ask you, why on earth are you doing this? Why are you putting yourself to the personal discomfort of all this? So try and figure out when that was. Try and remember, was there a particular moment that you thought, I've got to do something to save the world? Was there a particular person that made you think, I've got to get involved? It's really worth having a good think and coming up with a story so that you can tell it in an engaging and personal way. Now back to the old journalist again. When you meet this cunning swine, the 3 things to remember are: be prepared, be natural, and be in control.
They sound as though they contradict each other.
Well, you can prepare to a certain extent. If there's a different, most of the encounters with journalists that you might have are probably going to be on the hoof, ad hoc, impromptu during an event, but there will be set piece interviews where you go into a studio and you have to be an official spokesman or spokesperson. And when you do that, you have to be prepared with what you want to say. Prepare one 2 or 3 points that you want to say. This is a well-known thing. There's something about the number 3 that is psychologically compelling. People will remember groups of 3. So if you've got 3 points, they're great. If they're really, really precise and succinct, so that you can rattle them off, then so much the better.
Tony, could you repeat that again? Sorry, you phased out.
Oh, right. If you can think of a story that goes with each point that you make, then that's great, because people remember stories more than they remember facts. Stories are stored in the right-hand lobe of the brain, which is where the emotions live and where the memory lives. And facts tend to be stored in the left-hand side of the brain, which is the logical bit. If you want people to remember something, make it memorable by attaching it to a story. So paint a mental picture in people's head. And if the stories involve you, that's even better. People always love to hear a story about the person that they're talking to.
Tony, is it true with that? Is it also true that if you almost say to people the word story, you know, the story that dragged me in, it makes them think in that way and remember it even more?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, stories are journalists stuck in trade, so it doesn't do any harm to use the word story as much as you possibly can. The other thing is, oh yeah, the final point about preparation is don't wait for the questions to turn up. Don't wait for the right questions to come along, because they may never come. So come having prepared something that you definitely want to say. 1, 2, I say 1, 2, or 3 because you can't control it. If you get in 1 point that you wanted to make, that's a result. You can slap yourself on the back. You got that point in. If you get 2 in, that's even better. And if you get 3 in, that's maximum points. Fantastic, hooray! But they may not arise. The things that you want to say may not arise naturally from the questions that the journalist wants to ask you. So if the questions that you're being asked suit your purpose, that's absolutely fine, no problem, but they might not. If they don't, then you answer the question that you're asked briefly, and then you keep talking, and you build a bridge leading to the matter that you want to actually put in, and nobody will tell the difference. People are often accused of not answering the questions when they're asked by journalists. But that's only when you just completely ignore what they've been asked and don't address it in any way whatsoever.
How do you build the bridge?
It's actually easier than you think. Like, I mean, imagine that if you just got back from holiday, and you met up with a group of friends for the first time after the holiday, and if nobody asks you about your holiday, I bet you'll find a way of entering it into the conversation. Like this is the first pint I've had since I was in that bar in Torremolinos last Wednesday. You know, whatever it is, it will actually be quite natural.
Okay.
The next point is be natural. Which means don't worry about being fancy, don't worry about ums and ers. I mean, this is some people get freaked out because so many famous presenters and journalists are very well spoken and trained not to and er. People think, oh, I'm not suitable for radio or television. I'm dead common, me. Well, it's not like that. You know, natural speech is fantastic. The important thing is to be positive and upbeat. So be yourself. Be a slightly more supercharged version of yourself, I would say. You know, yourself after a nice morning run or a couple of cups of coffee, something that's pepped you up, because the way you talk really has an influence on what you're saying. Some people get a bit. You remember David Beckham when he first became famous? He was, he used to speak in a monotone. And that made him sound as if he was bored. And some people will have that effect when they're doing a news interview. They will sound like they don't care. So just be a bit, hey, positive, upbeat. You know, don't go raving mad with it. But that's the idea. So don't patronise, don't use jargon. Be in control is the final thing, which is you might think that's a bit weird, because when you go into a TV or radio studio, it's quite intimidating. It makes you think that you are in court or asking questions from a policeman or something. It's not like that at all. The journalist has no power at all to ask you questions. You are only asking questions voluntarily because you want to. Normally,
Oh, wow.
in talking about this stuff, you will want to. There's more to be gained from doing the interview than not doing the interview. So there's no problem with doing the interview. The more publicity, the better on this subject. But they have no legal power. They are just ordinary citizens. They're very good at looking impressive and looking like a figure of authority, but it's all kidology. If you don't want to talk to them, don't talk to them. However, you do talk to them. How you want to conduct the interview is as valid as the way they want to conduct the interview. So it is it's a negotiation. It's a transaction. Every interview is a transaction. One thing to be aware of is beware questions, particularly from newspaper reporters, that start off with the words, "Well, would you say that?" Would you say that Bristol is in danger of extinction in the next 20 years, or whatever it might be? It may be that you agree with the statement. If you agree with the statement, then that's fine. Just go along with it. If you don't agree with the statement, then say, "No, I wouldn't say that. But what I would say is this." So have an alternative if you don't like what they've said, because they will put, if you're not being interesting enough in their opinion, excuse me, they will try and put words in your mouth. So be careful of that. Some people I know are worried that think, "Oh, I'm not clever and I'm not full of facts about this stuff. I'm going to look stupid." Well, nobody can be expected to know everything. So say something. If you're asked a factual question, you don't know the answer. It's not a big deal, because nobody can know everything. So if you say something like, "Well, I can't give you chapter on verse on that, but what I can tell you is," sometimes you can get around it. They don't actually want detail. They just want the.
Can you maybe say something like, I'm not the best person to answer that, but
yes,
what
yes.
I do know is blah blah.
Yes. That's exactly right, because you're building the bridge there. The answer to the question is actually no, but you don't want to say no, because that kills the interview. They say, "Well, I can't exactly answer that, but what I can answer is this." So always think of ways that you can carry it further forward. Or the stopgap is, I can find out the answer and come back to you. I can't tell you now, but I can tell you in a few moments, and that gets over the problem. Think about the setting. Think about what's behind you. You can be made to look silly by standing in front of something that looks silly. So be aware of your surroundings, and if you're being filmed on television, when you're out in the street in a demonstration, think of it as a stage set. Say, how will this look? I'm standing in front of a large crowd, and they're doing something like, I don't know, lying down and being dead or something, and I'm answering questions. How will it look? So, for example, am I being serious enough in my demeanor when I'm answering these questions? Because nothing kills a protest more than having fun. It's a great thing to have fun on a protest. Obviously, it's great, it's fantastic. But if the camera catches people larking about, they will think that the whole thing is a joke. So just beware of that. If an interview doesn't go well, ask to do it again. 9 times out of 10, it will be fine. Take deep breaths.
You can do that.
Sorry, you can. Yeah, you can. You can ask to do it again. It will be. It's very rare that they won't do it. It's usually high stakes political interviews where they won't stop the camera and start again. But mostly they will. So take a good breath before you speak. Before you start to speak, speak slightly slower than you would in normal conversation. Don't worry about, if you've got a local accent, so much the better. We're in Bristol. People should sound like they come from Bristol. And pause slightly between sentences. Pauses are great. If you speak too quickly, which you might do because these are exciting things that you're talking about, it might be difficult to understand what you're saying. So remember to put in some pauses and try and relax. I know it's a terrible, unrelaxing thing that we are asking you to do. So here's the crowd again, and this is the thing about being your own media. Nowadays, the more contributions to the media debate, the better. So as I said before, this is the bit where you should interview each other. Ask each other these questions. Why are you here today? What first persuaded you to take action? And then share the footage very widely on your own social media and on the official site. It helps reinforce the message, the buzz, and stop any arguments. And it also ensures that in the unlikely event of trouble, because I mean it's a very well disciplined protest this, but in the unlikely event that something goes wrong, there will be plenty of people filming it, and that's very important. And
Great.
be good, be careful, and good luck. So that is the that's a fairly pathetic slideshow, but that's all I had time to put together today. Does anybody want to ask any questions after that?
Jasmal is saying, sorry, missed the T of chortle. What was the T?
Oh,
in
topical. Topical. It's happening today.
Which I suppose it's easy if you're on an action. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it's by the nature topical. But if somebody's coming to you, you know, maybe your local paper is, you know, wanting, so what's all this, you know, climate crisis about? If there is something that you can pick up that's,
they will want an angle. They will want something that's happening this week or today or tomorrow to peg it on.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That was really good.
So are we done now?
I think so. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll hang up then. Thank you very much, everybody, and I'll
Thank you very much.
see you later. Cheers. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.